You are listening to an episode of Megan is Not a Parent, But. This episode is brought to you by Positive Parenting ClassPass, 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. You can start today at bekindcoaching.com/ClassPass. In today's episode, we will be chatting about the ACEs study and the ACE score. So get cozy, grab your notebook, and let's dig in. Welcome to Megan is Not a Parent, But, the podcast where I, your host, Megan Ford, former early childhood educator turned positive parenting coach, helps parents just like you learn how to deal with your strong-willed child's difficult behavior. I've been described from my clients as a blend between Brene Brown and Miss Frizzle, you know, the one from the Magic School Bus. I help bring awareness and hold space for the hard conversations and make big concepts like behavior and relationships and temperaments easy to understand and easy to implement. If you're a parent who struggles with your child's loud, dramatic, disruptive, over-the-top behavior, but don't think a parenting coach would help you because those are just for the bad parent or those parents, then this episode is especially for you. I invite you to grab a journal, grab a cozy blanket, a warm beverage, and enjoy what you're about to explore. Here is a disclaimer as we're starting this class. We are building off of last week's episode, talking about what is trauma, what is childhood trauma. And the disclaimer here is that I am a parenting coach. And this information is for education and entertainment. It is not a substitution for professional mental health support. So if you do need help accessing and finding mental health support in your communities, feel free to reach out and I can get you pointed into the next steps. So here is where we are going to begin. We're going to begin by talking about one of my all-time favorite TED Talks. And this TED Talk is how childhood trauma affects health across a lifetime. And it's hosted by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. And she begins her TED Talk by sharing some shocking statistics. She begins by saying in the 1990s, the CDC and Kaiser Permanente discovered an exposure that dramatically increased the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading health causes of death in the United States. In high doses, it affects brain development, the immune system, hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Folks who have been exposed in high doses have triple the lifetime risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. And yet, doctors today are not trained in routine screening or treatment. Now, the exposure I'm talking about is not pesticides or packaging chemical, it's childhood trauma. And this is how I want to start this topic, is that if this is a new topic to you, it is not just a new topic on the micro levels of interpersonal relationships. It's also something that is quite foreign in the medical community, like she said, and yet doctors today are not trained in routine screening or treatment. This is a big topic that I care very passionately about, because when I watched this TED Talk and when I discovered this study, it was like a light switch went off and I was like, oh, yes. So if this topic is new to you, I invite you to sit with it, be with it, know that you are not alone in this. But in order to destigmatize this, learning about it and bringing awareness to it is always the first step. So here's where we're going to move into next. So it's the they says. The they says, kids have nothing to worry about. And I hear it all the time. And I did hear it as a teacher. Kids have nothing to worry about. Don't worry about it. You know, like, why are you crying? It's not that big of a deal. We shift into the space to minimize problems. And I actually think the opposite. I think kids do have much to worry about, just as adults have much to worry about. It's just that our worries are different. So what I invite you to consider is who is served by thinking that children don't have anything to worry about, that when they're crying after they fall, or they're facing a difficult time with a peer, or they're having struggles navigating, not having the right cup or plate at dinner, Who is served by thinking that they shouldn't be worried about it, or that it's not that big of a deal, or that their worries don't matter? Here's the truth, is that children require a safe adult to help them process and navigate what they do worry about, not to minimize or hide or leave them alone in their worries. Children benefit from at least one safe adult in their life. And if you're here, you're listening to this podcast, you're part of this community, you're here to learn and be open to learning and growing, then your actions decide if you are that person for your child. Your actions decide if you get to be that safe person, or you can do practice the skills of being that safe adult for your child, not to avoid the struggles, but to help them process through the struggles. And for many of us, this is so hard. I know for myself, it was hard. It was something I had to learn, because I had to begin to consider, did I have that safe adult to help process my struggles in those moments? And I ask you the same question. Did you have a safe adult to help you process your worries as a child? I think for many of us, the answer is no. And when we talk about breaking cycles and becoming aware of this work and doing this work, why it's so hard is because I know for me, this work was not modeled for me. These were not tools that were passed down to me. I was passed down fear-based tools. I had to learn about those tools, assess those tools, and then take active work to learn new tools. And this reminds me, throughout this episode, this is an episode that when I was making it, I was like, oh, wow, this ties up a lot of the buckets we started to open earlier in this season. So for this point, I encourage you to listen back to episode 4.8, season 4, episode 8, Someone on Fire Cannot Be Helpful. This invites you to start exploring those moments, those trigger points for you that create that fire in you. And it would make sense then, if I'm consumed by fire, why I want to minimize someone else's fire. But there's huge opportunity here to start, instead of minimizing theirs, what if we started to take care of ours? So the question here is, are you taking care of you to be able to be that safe person for your child? Not to minimize their worries, not to eliminate their worries, not to fix and rescue their worries, but to help them navigate through so that they can process and make sense and seek support through their worries. And if this is new for you, I want you to know you are not alone. And this has actually been studied. So we're going to talk about the ACEs study. The ACEs study stands for the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. We're going to talk about what the study is, what they found, how they did it, and then what this tells us, and really the opportunities for adults to step in. If you want to learn and read the study in its entirety, you can find it at The Relationship of Childhood Abuse and Household Dysfunction to Many of the Leading Causes of Death in Adults. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. So we're going to start here. What is the study? The original ACE study was conducted by Kaiser Permanente from 1995 to 1997, with 2 waves of data collection. All in all, they had over 17,000 HMO members from Southern California receiving physical exams completed with a confidential survey regarding their childhood experiences and current health status and behaviors. Basically, what they were doing, what the CDC wanted to look, or these researchers wanted to look at, is what were the health impacts of being exposed to child adversity and the impacts later in life. And so what they did is they found Kaiser Permanente, and they said, hey, if members opt in, can we give them it's a 10 question survey, and then we can start to take the data from their health records and start to see if there's any correlations. And that's what happened. The 10 questions that were given to all of their participants were the same no matter what. And if you want to learn more about them, again, you can go to cdc.gov and you can research the 10 questions that were given to ACE participants and take this quiz for yourself. But I'm going to read the questions right now. So here's a warning. If you are not ready to find out how you would have scored on this test, this is the time to just take pause and look away. And if you're still here, we're going to keep going. So the instructions is below is a list of 10 categories of adverse childhood experiences. From the list below, please place a check mark next to each ACE category that you experienced prior to your 18th birthday. This means when you were a child. Then add up the number of categories of ACEs you experienced and put a total number at the bottom. So the first question is, did you feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect you or take care of you? Question 2, did you lose a parent through divorce, abandonment, death, or other reason? Question 3, did you live with anyone who was diagnosed mentally ill or attempted suicide? Question 4, did you live with anyone who had a problem with drinking or using drugs, including prescription drugs? Question 5, did your parents or adults in your home ever hit, punch, beat, or threaten to harm each other? Question 6, did you live with anyone who went to jail or prison? Question 7, did a parent or adult in your home ever swear at you, insult you, or put you down? Question 7 or 8, did a parent or adult in your home ever hit, beat, kick, or physically hurt you in any way? Question 9, did you feel that no one in your home loved you or thought you were special? And question 10, did you experience unwanted sexual contact, such as fondling or oral, anal, vaginal intercourse and penetration? These were the 10 questions that were given to the participants. And if you took this with me, I want you to know that you're not alone if you did experience some of these. My personal ACE score is 7. 7. It means that I experienced this and it leaves me open and vulnerable to future health outcomes. So this brings this work very close. It's why I am so passionate. It is why I am so committed, not only to talking, but holding the space, because I know that I experienced these because my parents didn't have the supports in place to support them. And I know through reading the study, through reading these resources, by continuing to show up in these spaces, I know that I'm not alone. And what they found was that this is a big problem and it is hiding in plain sight. ACEs are common. About 61% of adults surveyed across 25 states reported that they had experienced at least one type of ACE. And nearly 1 in 6 reported that they had experienced 4 or more types of ACEs. So if you saw yourself in those questions, I hope you know that you are not alone. Preventing ACEs could potentially reduce a large number of health conditions. For example, up to 1.9 million cases of heart disease and 21 million cases of depression could have potentially been avoided by preventing ACEs. Those are big numbers. Sometimes I can't even conceptualize, like my brain can't even hold how widespread this is. Another thing to consider of how the enormity of this is some children are at greater risk than others. Women and several racial, ethnic, and minority groups are at greater risk for having experienced 4 or more types of ACEs. And the bottom line is ACEs are costly. The economic and social costs to families, communities, and society totals hundreds of billions of dollars each year. That's a big number. When we break it down, out of the 17,000 participants, 48% of those participants had 1 to 3 ACEs. Nearly 50% of those people who took the original ACEs study. 21.5% scored 4 or more, leaving only a third who had not experienced any or was not able to access that they had experienced it. Further through this study has now been expanded on and even widened, and this research has even deepened. I think there's now over 50 different peer-reviewed studies that really dug into this concept in all of the different areas, and they really expanded it out to see that these numbers do track. And if anything, the numbers of people who claim that they have had no experience in this drops to only almost around 17%. So why does this matter? What is the impact? What they found is that as the number of ACEs increase, so does the risk for negative health outcomes. The more ACEs you start to check off, that's an indicator that your body has gone through those stresses. Those are stressing you out. Those are stressing your nervous system, leading to that smaller window of tolerance, leading to more easily that stress or shutdown response. When they expanded this, the original ACEs looked at abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And when they went to go expand on this study, they expanded it into 5 other domains. They looked at the impacts of bullying. They looked at the impacts of community violence, neighborhood safety, racism, and living in foster care. So on top of those original 10 questions and 10 sectors, they really expanded it out. And what I see represented in the expansion of this is they're taking it from a micro interpersonal, and they're expanding it out into the macro or the systemic levels and seeing how they all impact each other. Why this is important, why I'm so passionate, why this is because when those systems get stressed, when the crisis windows widen, when the windows of shutdown widen, when the window of tolerance shortens, those adaptive processes, that's your body doing what it's designed to do. It's designed to interpret those threats. But when we experience this as children without caregivers to help us soothe and co-regulate through it, to help us process through those struggles, those adaptive processes turn into maladaptive coping. Meaning those same alarm systems are going off, but maybe they're going off at inappropriate times. So going back to the episode on assumptions, when we're talking through when our lens, how we assume things and how we interpret those behaviors in front of us, those situations in front of us, those alarms start going off. They start ringing off. And what happens is sometimes we interpret, right, we interpret those kitty cats as tigers. That's what we talked about inside of episode 5.3, the 3 assumptions I make of all parents. We talk about why we assume things and why it's best to check those assumptions. Because sometimes what we see, we think and we interpret it as a tiger hiding in the bushes, but really it's a cat. And the opportunity here is having a safe, secure caregiver to help us regulate through those stresses. Going back to episode 9, season 5, episode 9, what is regulation, co-regulation, dysregulation, autoregulation? This is the value of co-regulating with, so that we have a safe, calm, soothing adult meeting a child who is stressed and doing the work to help them calm down, not by adding more stress. That's why I say over and over again, are we acting as a support or are we acting as a stress? This is why we center the child's experience. This is why we get into spaces to help support parents by awareness, education, and practice, so that you can become aware of those alarms that are going off in you and help regulate yourself so that now you can share your calm. which invites us to consider, how do we prevent adverse childhood experiences? If we're saying, hey, this is something that can be eliminated or highly preventable, how do we do it? So ACEs are preventable. There are a number of factors that may increase or decrease the risk of perpetuating and experiencing violence. To prevent ACEs, we must understand and address the factors that put people at risk for or protect them from violence. Creating sustainable, safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments for all children and families can prevent ACEs and help all children reach their full potential. I took this directly from the CDC website. They have resources on how to take some next steps and find resources, in-person resources in your community that can help support you in accessing resources to support you and your family in it. Brain break moment. All right, I know that I can go deep way fast. So let's just take a pause here to take a deep breath in and let it out. And listen while I let you know that this episode is brought to you by me, Megan, and my Positive Parenting Class Pass. Positive Parenting Class Pass are 6 simple positive parenting classes to kickstart your positive parenting journey. Those classes include Positive Parenting 101, which is a class that is just designed to give you the first steps in what positive parenting is and what it is not. Second class is Emotional Validation. In this class, we dig into how can we show up to have your child feel seen and heard in their lived experience. The third class is Setting Boundaries, all about communicating, enforcing, and allowing testing of your secure and consistent and firm boundaries. The fourth class is a class called Ending Entitlement. Inside of this class, we dig into how we are showing up using tools of entitlement and how we can start to release those tools and begin practicing tools of empowerment and choice. And we know that what we put down, they're going to pick up. The fifth class is a class all about natural consequences. This is a class that gets very clear, and you'll walk away knowing what an imposed consequence is, what a logical consequence is, and most importantly, how to begin utilizing natural consequences so your children begin learning from their lived experience. And the final class is a class all about apologizing. I like to say that connection is the most skipped over step and recovery is the least utilized step. So in that step, you'll start to learn how to show up and use impactful and effective apologies so that your child knows that you see them and hear them and care about them. If you are looking to begin your journey today, then I highly encourage you go to bekindcoaching.com/classpass and dig into the classes starting today. As my free gift, you will receive Raising Respectful Kids, which is my 3-part video series all about how to stop focusing on adding on more decorations to your child and to you and to your relationship, and instead starting to reinforce and build a solid and secure foundation together. I can't wait to hear all of your amazing wins from the steps that you take inside of Positive Parenting Class Pass. All right, ready to get back to our episode? Before we get back, let's take one more deep breath together. And take a deep breath in and let it out. And let's go. I really believe that what this is attacking this issue from all fronts. From the macro sense, meaning that systemic level, doing the legislative work, doing the community outreach and education, and then also really leaning in and saying, what is my work within my home? What can I start to step into learning about and practicing and healing and implementing within my home? And again, if you're here, if you're listening, if you're part of this community, chances are you're already open to this work. You're open to learning, you're open to hearing, you're open to navigating, meeting yourself exactly where you are so that you can help build your toolbox so that you can help mitigate these impacts within your own home. And the CDC agrees. The CDC agrees on how to pair strategies and approaches. So in their lens of preventing ACEs, if the strategy is to strengthen economic supports to families, the approach that they suggest is strengthening household financial security, funding programs that help support households through financial insecurity, and having family-friendly work policies. This takes into account leave. This is in daycare. This is why all of these programs that we're hearing about, it matters, because when families have supports, then they're able to be better resourced and better able to support themselves and their children. Another strategy is promote social norms that protect violence and adversity. So public education campaigns, legislative approaches to reduce corporal punishment, bystander approaches, and men and boys as allies in prevention. So bringing in more supports and education to welcome more communities into this work. Another strategy is to ensure a strong start for children. Early childhood home visitation, high quality childcare, preschool enrichment with family engagement, giving support and education to children at an earlier age. As someone who worked in early childhood education, I will tell you, our society in America, at least I can speak from the United States, we undervalue these years. We undervalue these years. We call them babysitters. We call them, I've even heard it referred to as kiddie kennels. It's a place for kids to just go. And we don't see that that foundation is setting them up for their life. So becoming more supportive in these areas, again, from the macro systemic level, but also from the micro of our own impacts, in sourcing in and impacting our own circles of influencing and letting those ripples ripple out, it matters. The strategy that I do, teach skills, the approach is social emotional learning, self-dating, safe dating and healthy relationship skills programs, parenting skills and family relationship approaches. This is the approach that I take and the strategy that I directly have built my entire platform on. If parents know how to be that safe, soothing, supportive, and secure caregiver, I know they will. I know they will. No parent wakes up and says, well, I'm going to go add to my child's stress. I don't believe it. I think largely this gets perpetuated unconsciously. Another strategy is to connect youth to caring adults and activities. This is getting them in spaces of mentoring programs and after-school programs, after-school enrichment spaces, so they can start to build community. And finally, intervene and lessen intermediate and long-term harms. So enhanced primary care visits, victim-centered services, treatment to lessen the harms of ACEs, treatment to prevent problem behavior and future involvement in violence, and family-centered treatment for substance use disorders. Treating the human first. By even becoming aware this is a problem that is within our society. The bottom line, if the strategy is to support children, the approach is to center children, to value their perspective, to value their worries, to take those worries as serious, and then find ways to help them navigate through it. Not to avoid it, not to minimize it, not to shoo it away. This reminds me of this morning. I woke up, and my husband, Jason, gets up. He'll go to the gym every morning. And this morning I woke up and he was like, I skipped the gym. That was his first thing out of his mouth. He skipped the gym. I said, I think that's okay. Yeah, it's all right. Let's go out for a walk together. And we were talking. He was anxious about going to work. He was navigating a lot of just big feelings, and we started talking about them. And he was like, I think going to the gym helps me go through my stress and anxiety. And then he said in the same vein, actually, I think going to the gym helps me run away from it. And I said, wow, that's a big awareness to have. Not that this was a bad thing, but this is a thing that I always say it's not the thing, it's how we use the thing. So it's a big awareness to say, how can I use this not to change the strategy, going to the gym, but to change the approach? How can we now better use that time for you to help process through it? And the episode here to kind of dig into this topic more, to validate this more, is the parent-child relationship is asymmetrical, episode 5, season 5, episode 4. Seeing that it is us that shares it with the children. It's us that teaches it to the children. And so the person who does this work first is us. This also was the foundation of the program Understanding Us series, the 3-phase positive parenting series. It's all to help pull back and realign that your experience as the parent is giving you signals to say, hey, how can I lean in and support my child, support me and my child, so that I feel capable of being the support to them, and I feel able to be the support to them. And now I feel motivated to learn how to be the support for them. I'm going to begin to end on the last part of Dr. Nadine Burke Harris's TED Talk. And she says something that, again, validated my experience as well. She says, at first I thought we marginalized the issue because it doesn't apply to us. It's an issue for those kids in those neighborhoods, which is weird because the data doesn't bear that out. In the original ACEs study, it was done on a population that was 70% Caucasian, 70% college educated. But then the more I talk to folks, I'm beginning to think that maybe I had it completely backwards. If I were to ask how many people in this room grew up with a family member who suffered from a mental illness, I bet a few hands would go up. And then if I were to ask how many folks had a parent who maybe drank too much, who really believed that if you spared the rod, you spoiled the child, I bet a few more hands would go up. Even in this room, this is an issue that touches many of us. And I'm beginning to believe that we marginalize the issue because it doesn't apply to us. Maybe it's easier to see it in other zip codes because then we don't want to look at it. We'd rather be sick. I know when I first learned about this, it was a lot to take in. It was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I felt like big emotions from being part of it unconsciously and unaware. I felt big emotions of experiencing it and having that awareness. And then just like the weight of, oh my gosh, everybody needs to know about this. And then the sadness that not everybody knows about this. That I was learning about this through a TED Talk and not through my teacher training, not through any college course, not through any experience. The hours of continuing education that I took never once brought this up. But then I had gratitude that I had awareness of it when I had awareness of it, because then once I had awareness of it, then I can step into empowerment. So sometimes when we think about this, we ask ourselves, well, are we a part of this system? Are we doing this? Does this apply to us? Just like she said. And oftentimes there's going to be a distancing effect. Like we want to get away from it. We want to again, push it off to those people. Well, it wasn't that bad, right? We then go to minimize our own childhood experiences. Well, I mean, it wasn't that much. It wasn't that often. It wasn't a big problem. But instead, I invite you to ask, how are we part of this system? Because this is a system that is widely impacting us. And now I want to close with a story from our Monday intentions. Every Monday on TikTok Live, I pull 3 cards to ground us in. And this week, these cards aligned perfectly to exactly what we are talking about here. The first card says, oneness is my true nature. Ooh, this connection back to oneness, validation, connection, holding you, standing in yours. We don't need to distance. We don't need to put space. We can invite in, let's bring it closer, because we are all part of this system of earth and humanness. The second card says, make it right. Correct something to make it the way you want it to be, or at very least, make it more fair and take responsibility. And then the third card was the 7 of Wands, which is the card of courage and inner strength. And here it says, a single wand stands up tall, ablaze with light. The others fall away in shadows. Such is the story of the 7 of Wands. You'll not find any strength or support from others, only yourself. It's time to be truly courageous and stand up for your beliefs. You may feel overwhelmed with caution and fear, but your internal fire will guide the way. And then through this, when we were talking about it and processing it, I drew a note card to help illustrate this and how it impacts and shows up. I'm going to share that note card with you. We thought of an example. The example is when you take your children to the playground. And sometimes that is a stressful situation. Perhaps there are certain stresses that we try to avoid by snacks, by the right footwear, by having water. And sometimes those situations are still stressful. The fire in us becomes an eruption, becomes too much. So then we step away and the fire lowers. And then we make the connection that it's the playground. The playground makes my fire burn. If I don't go to the playground, then I'm calm. So I'll avoid the playground. And that's okay for a while until birthday parties or the dentist come up and we see that fire again. So then we again connect it to the things that are triggering the fire. We see it as outside of us. And we say, okay, birthday parties, dentist, playground, those are too much. So I'm going to step back. No eruption. All right, I'm going to pull it back. But then that starts to grow. It starts to grow to the person on the phone creates the fire, or meal times create fire, or even doctor's offices, or taking baths, or driving, or screen time, or going to Target, or just a random Thursday. As Stephanie said, we just identify it's Thursday. I just need to avoid Thursdays. We start to outsource the fire mitigation to the things around us. And it serves us for a bit until we realize, wait, do I want this? Let's reconnect back to the beliefs. Is this serving me? Yes, it's helping me stay safe by allowing my fire to stay small. But are these things that I want to experience? Do I want to experience Target? Do I want to experience the park? Do I want to experience birthday parties? Do I want to experience the dentist and the doctor and talking to people and Thursdays and screen time and driving? Are these experiences that I want to have? If the answer is no, keep them on the shit list, as my mom would say. Keep them off. Pay no more. Stand empowered in your choice. This creates my eruption and I do not value this in my life. I no longer want to do this thing. But if the answer is yes, I do value these things. I do want to feel better in it. I do want to experience it. I do want my children to experience it. Then perhaps it's pulling it back to say, hey, that flame and fire, it's not a warning sign to avoid it. It's a warning sign to take care of it. It's a flag of surrender that's going up saying, hey, here's a moment, not to avoid it, but to take care of it, to soothe yourself in it, to support you in it, so that you can enjoy those things. By first taking care of the fire that's inside of us. And I know that's big, it's hard, it's overwhelming sometimes, but there's power in that, so that we're not just avoiding those things, but really showing up in ways to be empowered through them. And in closing, I'm going to end on a Brené Brown quote from her book, Atlas of the Heart. We spoke about it this morning during morning ritual, and I thought it's such a powerful way to end. When you hold someone accountable for hurtful behaviors and they feel shame, which oftentimes when we're talking about this topic, big feelings of shame come up. It's not the same as shaming someone. I am responsible for holding you accountable in a respectful and productive way. I am not responsible for your emotional reaction to that accountability. Sadly, I've also learned that sometimes, even when the pain takes your breath away, you have to let the people you love experience the consequences of their own behavior. And that one really hurts. I wanted to end on this because this topic is big. The reason why we pull away from it and why we want it to be somewhere else other than where we are, and we want to deny its experience, is because we want that. It feels overwhelming and we want to avoid it. But I encourage you to start to listen to it. Find spaces that feel safe to support you in it. Find spaces and supports like therapy, like community groups that help you feel safe, not in avoiding the thing, but helping you process through the thing, so that you can start to lean into showing up in the spaces that you value and standing strongly in your beliefs. I like to say that I empower parents to empower children, so that you can have the choice. Empowerment's to have the choice. And sometimes we don't feel like there's that choice. And I want to say there is, for you and for them. So in closing, let's consider, I want you to ask yourself these questions. How am I taking care of myself? Have I found safe spaces of support for me? Have I healed the wounds that I carry? And how comfortable do I feel being held accountable for my own hurtful behaviors? These are questions for you to be gentle with yourself in your answers. If you've made it this far, I am proud of you, and I hope you are proud of you too. These past 2 episodes have been big hitters, but both of these past episodes really illustrate why this work is so valuable, why in order to mitigate the impact of ACEs, we first have to become aware of it. We have to understand that it is something that impacts a lot of us. And then we start to influence our own circle of influences, because maybe they're unaware of it as well. Coming up next week, as we move through this, we're going to be talking through the 4 trauma responses, how to identify them, what they are, and how they look in kids, and then how we can become a safe, supportive, soothing caregiver within them. If you want to join live and stay for the Q&A after, I invite you to find the Zoom room link posted in our Facebook community, Positive Parenting with Megan Ford. If you've taken notes throughout this episode, which this was a big note-taking episode, I'm sure, I invite you to share your thoughts and takeaways. You can do that by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You can share your thoughts and takeaways on social media and tag me, and you can share your thoughts inside our dedicated post inside of our Facebook community, Positive Parenting with Megan Ford. If you're listening to my voice right now, I want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for staying to the end. My mission in life is to help support parents in feeling supported and empowered in doing this work. This podcast, my Facebook community, and my programs and book club all help parents work through the phases of awareness, education, and practice. If you are ready for the next step, I invite you to check out Positive Parenting 101. Inside this 45-minute class, you'll learn more about what positive parenting is and isn't, so you can start putting down the tools with negative impacts and replace them with positive parenting tools. You can get started today at bekindcoaching.com/ClassPass. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next week.